Welcome back and Happy New Year's to all of the goths, gays, theys, and metal fans of all other denominations. Over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to try to pilot a couple of recurring ideas that I have. First one being an underground metal showcase. Now, underground is kind of hard to define in metal because there's kind of layers to what underground is depending on what scene you're going to. I just decided to define it as less than 10,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. That seemed like a arbitrary separator that I could live with. And the first band that we are going to be taking a look at today is a big favorite of mine, if you could not tell already. It is Horrendous. Horrendous clocks in at around 7,000 monthly listeners, which is just far, far too low. So let's talk a little bit about them. Horrendous is you could call them a progressive death metal band, but not in the sense that Opeth is a progressive death metal band. More in the way that The Sound of Perseverance was a progressive death metal album. A lot of their music kind of falls into that territory. So if you're a big fan of late career death, I think you'll really, really enjoy this. The first album that Horrendous put out was called The Chills. I think this album is very much all of the band members kind of trying to find themselves and find their style and how they want to write their music. A lot of the instrumentals are really good. The vocals, I think, are a little lacking. The mix is a little all over the place. But overall, it just kind of shows a lot of the potential that the band had. Moving on to their second album, we have Ecdysis. So it starts off with the song The Stranger, which is probably my favorite song off the album, but isn't the best album opener. It starts off really slow. It eventually picks up and is a very good song, but it just kind of takes a minute to really get ramped up, which, not really what you're looking for on a death metal album like this. This album really begins to employ this contrast between very clear guitar tones and that buzzsaw guitar that we found on The Chills. The vocals are much better on this album. It's much smoother. There's a lot more care and attention put to the enunciation of the lyrics. This album's full of killer riffs all over the place. They don't really take time for extended guitar solos. Instead, they just kind of sprinkle in these like micro guitar solos all over the place, and I really like that. It adds a lot of flavor to all the songs all over the place because there's so much kind of unique songwriting that goes into each one. The mix of this album is really good too. The drums just sound incredible. The guitars all sound really good. Yeah, just a huge step up from The Chills overall. Horrendous has a really interesting theme across their last three albums of starting off a little bit slow and ending really, really strong. This album kind of kicks off that trend with When the Walls Fall Down, or what is it called? When the Walls Fall. You open with this very kind of new wave of British heavy metal style riff that feels like it could have just been plucked off of an old Judas Priest record, but the way that it's made to fit onto this record is really, really good sounding. I don't really have a better way to put it, but it just sounds really good. And then only a year later, Horrendous would go to drop their third album, Anaretta. This one's very interesting because it kind of feels like Ecdysis Part 2, except it ditches that buzzsaw guitar tone. I think this is the album that the vocals really come into their own. Their vocalist has such a unique style and a unique sound. They really decided in this one to just go all in on that kind of weird, shrill scream that they use, and I think that is part of the reason maybe why they shifted away from the buzzsaw guitar tone, because having much more clean, undistorted guitars really kind of complements that vocal style a lot better. Very much in the style of Chuck Schuldiner and Death. The mixing and the composition of everything is really good. It's very similar to Ecdysis, I think, overall. Yeah, something about this album as well as Ecdysis a little bit too is that there are moments where they can just meander about a little bit and the song doesn't progress forward. They don't go back and recycle a lot of ideas, but that means that there's kind of a lot of empty space between transitioning into the next thing. And not all of those transitions are particularly great. There are some moments where it can be a little whiplashy to kind of go from the more fast-paced sections into something slower. But I do think that that improves a lot later on. These are really nitpicky criticisms though, and none of that is to say that any of these songs aren't good. I do really enjoy almost every song on both of these records. Even the interludes are really good and very pretty sounding, I think. These two records really serve to define the sound that Horrendous would have on their fourth and the most recent album that they've put out, Idol. This is one of my favorite death metal records of all time. Idol is a masterpiece. There's really one kind of nitpicky criticism of this album too. I think you could just remove the opening instrumental entirely. Just get it out of there, because the first song on this record, Soothsayer, is just the perfect way to open an album, and I can't fathom why they didn't choose to open the album with Soothsayer. Honestly, you could have just taken the intro Prescience and just put it onto the instrumental of the album Threnody later on. Maybe put it somewhere in the middle instead of making it the second to last song. Keep Soothsayer at the front and you have damn near a perfect record. Idol takes a lot of the ideas off of Ecdysis and Anaretta, taking Anaretta's sound and just amplifying a lot of them to the most polished versions that you had seen on their entire discography thus far. There's so many more groovy sections that just sound amazing. Some of the riffs do repeat on this album more so than the last two, but it's still so infrequent that you never get bored of any of it. Every member of the band has so many moments on the album that they just get to flourish and shine, and it sounds so great to hear everything coexisting and just sounding great all at the same time. In the empty spaces between the notes of the guitar, you can hear the bass, and I love it. I think it sounds so good. I think the best thing that Idol does, though, is it just trims the fat off of a lot of the songs from Anaretta and Ecdysis. I think both of those albums clocked in around 45 minutes, which isn't a very long time, but this one clocks in around 40, and you can tell just on all of these songs where previously it would have just kind of gone into a slow section before going into the next. This one, there's not as much time just meandering about, and that is probably the best decision that they ever made. The one time where the transition isn't as clean is on Devotion, Blood for Ink, which is still a great song. It starts off as kind of like their signature style of the high octane, really fast-paced death metal that then abruptly shifts and then goes back. The shift is a little wonky, but it really, I think all of it works at the end of the day. The album then closes with the song Obelisk. It has so many groovy sections, has so many soaring riffs. Yeah, it's just a really, really great way to close out the record. One of the strongest tracks for sure on the whole album. Overall, Horrendous is an incredibly refreshing band in the death metal scene today. I think it's one of the better homages to early death metal. If nothing else, it serves as a great palate cleanser when you're going from some of the much more high octane bands that exist nowadays. They just thrive in the mid tempo, and I don't think that there's enough death metal bands that really kind of buy into that. I really, really hope that they put out some new material soon, because it's been 4-5 years almost since Idol came out. I believe that they're touring right now, so hopefully they are writing some new material. If so, then I cannot wait for it, because these guys rule. Please go check these guys out. They do not get enough praise. Be sure to leave in the comments any other bands that you think also should be checked out on a series like this. Bands that fall below that threshold or an equal threshold on another streaming platform. Yeah, please let me know. I love checking out the bands that you guys recommend. I've gotten some incredible ones already that I will probably be looking to review maybe on a show like this if this one does well. Let me know if you would like to see more reviews of underground bands like this. Do we need to go deeper into the underground? Is Horrendous not underground enough? Please let me know. If you enjoyed this and want to see more content like this, please be sure to like and subscribe. Alright everybody, take care, love each other, I'll see you later.